No one person has done more to increase public appreciation for birds than Roger Tory Peterson. His Field Guide to the Birds, first published in 1934 when Peterson was 25 years old, was revolutionary, opening a new window onto the natural world for millions of people. When Roger Tory Peterson was born in 1908, bird identification was a very different undertaking than it is today, 100 years later. Mostly, you identified birds you held in your hand. You got them into your hand by shooting them, whether you were a scientist collecting for a university or a hunter bringing birds to the market or to the family table. Such close examination was the only practical means by which a person could become really skilled at naming wild birds. Today, millions of people can recognize distant birds at a glance, something that John James Audubon himself would have thought impossible. And while museum collections are still invaluable resources, one need not be a professional ornithologist to identify hundreds, even thousands of species. Unquestionably, Roger Tory Peterson's Field Guide was a major factor in this transformation. When Peterson was a boy in Jamestown, a small city in southwestern New York, he, like most kids, was captivated by nature and spent many hours roaming the local woods and fields in search of animals. He was especially intrigued by moths.
These amazing moths that were attracted to the gas streetlights in Jamestown were off limits to Roger because in the summertime there was a curfew. It was like, 8 o'clock or something like that. So this just wouldn't do. So Roger, under his own volition, went to the police chief, told him his problem, and the chief of police wrote this note out to Roger Peterson that he had the police department's permission to stay out past curfew to collect moths and insects. He was mercilessly teased by his peers for being, Professor Bugs Peterson or Professor Nuts Peterson, and at that age that's pretty tough to take. And it wasn't until 7th grade when his teacher, Blanche Hornbeck, who also was a naturalist, validated this whole interest. Roger said it was the first adult in his life that was ever interested in the field biological sciences like he was, and it changed his life.
Hornbeck and her junior Audubon Club had set the stage for a pivotal encounter.
It was Saturday, and my friend Carl Hammerstrom, who lived up the street, and I decided to explore south of town. So we crossed the railroad tracks, went up across Swede Hill to the old reservoir, and there on an oak tree, or maybe it was a maple, there was a bundle of brown feathers. It was a flicker that was asleep, apparently tired from migration, but I thought it was dead, so very gingerly I poked it, and this inert bunch of feathers all of a sudden sprang to life with wild eyes, looked at us and then flashed away, and with all that gold under its wings. And it was the contrast between what I thought was dead and was very much alive. And it was almost like resurrection.
For the rest of his life, Roger Peterson focused on birds. He and a developing cohort of young friends spent their free time seeking them all around Jamestown, finding bird nests, taking bird photographs, and sharing their discoveries. But birds couldn't be netted and examined quite as easily as moths at a streetlight. They were often a little too far and a little too fast. Here, Peterson was fortunate to have another talent. He was a natural artist, with an ability to render subjects in a way that captured their essence. Soon, Roger was filling notebooks with his own field sketches, accompanied by notes on color, location, date, and weather. But even someone with Peterson's skills and persistence often found it frustrating to name birds. The available reference books were extremely technical, and at times needlessly detailed for quick identifications. Frank M. Chapman's Handbook of Birds of Eastern North America was a reference that Peterson held in high regard, and one that was actually designed for field use. Its description of the American robin begins, "Top and sides of the head black, a white spot above the eye. Rest of the upper parts grayish slate color, margins of wings slightly lighter." It goes on like this. The obvious orange breast is mentioned 8th in a list of 9 characters. This organized, systematic approach makes sense where one has unlimited time to examine specimens, but it certainly isn't well suited to the average citizen in his or her backyard. The writings and illustrations of Ernest Thompson Seton pointed to a different way of knowing birds. One particular story from Seton's book, Two Little Savages, caught Roger Peterson's attention. Entitled, How Jan Knew the Ducks Afar, it recounted the method by which a young boy taught himself to identify waterfowl. Jan looked both at distant live birds and at stuffed specimens in a hunter's display case. He noted the most basic, unique patterns and features of each species. He then drew illustrations of these uniforms, as he called them, for reference. When he was done, he had created a basic field guide. Roger Tory Peterson immediately saw the power in such a simplified, visual approach. Peterson completed high school at age 16. His first job was painting Asian-inspired decorative designs on furniture produced at a Jamestown factory. For 2 years, Peterson saved his money for art school. He moved to New York City in 1927 and began several years of formal art training. All the while, he was meeting and learning from many of the leading ornithologists and bird artists of the era, including Peterson's idol, the painter Louis Agassiz Fuertes. He was also mightily impressed and influenced by the field skills of Ludlow Griscom, a pioneer of bird identification in the bush rather than in the hand. But still, there was the problem of books. Roger didn't own a copy of Chapman's authoritative handbook, but he memorized all he could from it and other references during frequent visits to the public library. Like most bird students of the day, he carried the inexpensive pocket-sized book by Chester A. Reed. Depicting 200 common species, the Reed Guide was portable and fairly easy to use, but it was neither as accurate nor as comprehensive as the book Roger wished for. With a bit of encouragement from his friend William Vogt, Roger Tory Peterson realized that he himself was uniquely qualified to create just such a book. The book was called A Field Guide to the Birds, including all species found in eastern North America. It was billed as a bird book on a new plan, and it was certainly that, with an instantly accessible visual style, depicting birds in a way that was both vividly impressionistic and scientifically accurate. Peterson further drew the reader's eye to key points by the use of arrows, a simple, elegant innovation that at times nearly rendered the accompanying text unnecessary. What text there was both memorable and concise. The American robin is covered in just 6 words, the one bird that everybody knows. An initial run of 2,000 copies of Peterson's guide was printed and sold out in the first week. It and its revisions have gone on to sell more than 7 million copies. Today, more than 50 different topics, from wildflowers to butterflies to stars and planets, are covered in the Peterson Field Guide series. While no individual person or single event can be entirely credited with bringing birdwatching to the masses and ushering in the modern conservation movement, Roger Tory Peterson, the kid naturalist from Jamestown, and the publication of his field guide that unlocked the wonder of birds for millions come as close as any. In the golden flash of a tired flicker's wings, the world had become new again.